Welcome to episode 48 of Believe in TCU as part of the Believe Network. I'm Zion Trammell, and I've got Seth Dowdle with me today. We're going to recap the college baseball super regionals over the weekend. It was fun, lots of entertainment, lots of drama. And then we're going to discuss some more TCU transfer portal news, some stuff going on with TCU baseball, who's staying, who's leaving. We discussed that on Friday. We'd like to thank JD Andrus for joining the show, but we're going to go into it a little bit more. It's the off season now for TCU baseball, so we're going to continue that conversation. But Seth, first things first, super regionals. It was a fun weekend. Lots of good baseball being played.
It was a very fun weekend. Underrated part, I think, of the NCAA Division I baseball tournament experience is Super Regionals weekend. It kind of feels like it's almost like the purgatory between Earth, which is regionals, and then heaven, which is Omaha. We're just trying to get there. But people, forget that, there's a lot of fun baseball that can be played here. And 8-team seasons ended this weekend, and 8 teams get to live on and head to the promised land next weekend. But yeah, it was a lot of fun. We saw some dramatic victories, some really, really good stories continue on. And also, the agony of defeat was very prevalent as well.
It was. It's always rough when you lose at this point of the year. We're going to start things off with Oregon State because TCU played in that regional, and obviously it went sideways. But they played a really good 3-game series with Florida State. The Beavers winning 5-4 in game one, and then game two kind of hit a wall there with Florida State with Jamie Arnold pitching 6 1/3 innings, giving up 1 run. They fall 3-1, and then the Beavers win game three, 14-10. We talked about the bats for Oregon State and how good they can be, and that obviously helped them win. And pretty cool story for them being an independent, marching all the way to Omaha. Did you catch that series much?
I did. It is, the theme of this postseason, and I guess the theme of Oregon State athletics for the past year and a half has kind of been, like getting knocked down but getting up off the mat. You look at that first game, they're down by 3 runs, or maybe, no, 2 runs in the ninth, and they're down to their final strike, and they come back to tie it and ultimately win it in the 10th. And then that's huge because, as you mentioned, Jamie Arnold pitching for Florida State in game 2, Florida State opting not to go with him in game number 1 kind of ends up biting them in the end, although they were going to win that game had it not been for the absolute collapse. And then the game 3 of the Super Regionals is always a complete just abomination of baseball, I'm going to call it in many regards. If you look at the scores around the game 3s, 14, it's no one has any pitching left. So it's 14, it's just offense, and 14-10. That score not very emblematic of, I think, the overall pace of that game. Oregon State was up 13-3 after 3 innings, and Florida State kind of chipped away, but was never really in that one. So, but yeah, the Beavers, after losing game 1 of the regional, heading to Omaha.
It's pretty cool. Definitely happy for them. Next team I wanted to mention because there is one lone Big 12 representative, and that is Arizona. I'm not going to lie, Seth. I did not see this coming, especially after game 1. We were recording the show, and they were getting destroyed. They were down 9-0. They ended up losing 18-2. And like, all right, let's wrap it up. This super regional is over. And then Arizona wins 10-8 in game 2, then 4-3 in game 3. And if I remember correctly, I think Arizona had a little bit of a comeback there.
Yeah,
In
North
game
Carolina was up
2.
3-1 late. North Carolina choked leads in both games 2 and 3. They were up 3-1 in the late innings in game 3. And I believe, yes, also in game 2, there was a bit of a comeback from Arizona. That one was more of a back and forth affair. North Carolina had this one in the sights and just couldn't hit the target, which is a shame for a Tar Heels program that has been very successful, has yet to win a national title. I saw some people calling them a blue blood of college baseball. I don't know if I agree with that. They're a very good college baseball program, but have yet to, get that goal. But Arizona, also, I think kind of like an underrated historical baseball program as well. First year in the Big 12, they win the conference tournament and head into Omaha as the lone representative of the conference. Now, can we really count it? I think there's 3 Pac-12 teams actually in this instead of if you want to think about it. There's 3 Pac-12 teams.
Instead of one independent, one Big 12, and one Big 10, it's like
Yes.
all, yeah. It is kind of crazy to think about. Like, we're talking about Arizona as a Big 12 representative. Meanwhile, the one that's been in the conference for a little while now, West Virginia, they lost to LSU. I didn't catch that series at all, but I picked
I did
LSU to
not
win.
either. LSU kind of, gave them the business, so to speak.
Yeah, but I'm excited for Arizona. I mean, it's, again, that series that TCU played and uh, in the regular season was super competitive. The Horned Frogs kind of blew it late. Hey, maybe that's just a thing for Arizona, is they are a really good come from behind team, because it feels like they did a lot. They did it in the Big 12 championship game. Granted, they were only down 1-0, but they still found a way to win against Braden Sloan and when he was on the bump. So it's a resilient Arizona team. I mean, we'll see how far they can make it in Omaha, but that's a cool story for sure.
Yeah, I really go back to that Big 12 championship game, and I think about how maybe things could be a lot different if TCU just wins that game 1-0. Now, does it mean that they host a regional instead of going to Corvallis? I don't know. Maybe, right? Maybe it was the extra thing that the committee needed on TCU's resume. It was a Big 12 championship to award them a host spot. If they play like they did though in Corvallis, it wouldn't have mattered if they were playing a 4 seed or a 1 seed. They're not winning nothing. But it does make you think that maybe things could have been a little bit different if TCU wins that game instead of losing it.
I know it's so interesting, and it's okay. I guess it's weird to say that we're going off topic by talking about TCU, but it is crazy how much momentum. Even though JD said it wasn't always the prettiest, they were had a lot of momentum going in that Big 12 championship game, and then they pounced Kansas. They defeated Houston, and they had a good end to the regular season, and then things fell apart so quickly. It's really hard to explain, and it's kind of the crazy aspect of college baseball. I mean, look at Vanderbilt and how dominant they were at the end of the season, and then no, we're not even discussing them anymore. They get bounced in the first round. So it's momentum and how teams are playing can certainly play a factor in college baseball.
Yeah, for sure. And like if you had told me that after that TCU Kansas Big 12 semifinal that both teams would not win a game for the rest of the season after that, I would have been bamboozled to my core. And right now I am bamboozled to my core. Neither of them won a game after that. Kansas went 0-2 in Fayetteville, and TCU lost the Big 12 title and then pooped their pants in Oregon.
They sure did. That's one way of putting it. Speaking of Fayetteville, the Hogs, Arkansas, back in Omaha, defeating Tennessee. For my Arkansas fan, I guess over here, I'll leave it to you to kind of discuss what you thought about Arkansas's performance this weekend in a really good matchup with Tennessee. I think a lot of people are excited for that one.
Yeah, frankly, Arkansas made Tennessee look like a little baby. I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. I'm going to be serious though. Like, it didn't look close.
Yeah.
Arkansas is very well rounded. Finally, they have offense. Like they're hitting homers now. They hit a program record, I think 123. Don't quote me on that. Homers this year, which I was thinking about like TCU's offense, and we were like, "Yay, they hit 60! This is so fun."
Try doubling that.
Yeah, I know. And, to bring it back to a TCU perspective, a big part of that offense for Arkansas this year has been Logan Maxwell, the TCU transfer who was in Fort Worth for 3 years, and he moves on to Fayetteville for this year. In the game against Tennessee, in the fourth inning, Logan Maxwell hits a grand slam to make it 7-1 Arkansas. The ball left the bat. Do you want to know what the exit velocity on Logan Maxwell's grand slam was?
I do.
89.4 miles an hour.
What? Wait, okay, I was not expecting that, as you just saw from my reaction. I was thinking, oh, baby, what is it going to be? 89?
Yeah.
What?
Which was one of 2 homers that Arkansas hit this weekend that were less than 90 miles an hour off the bat. They hit 2 of them, which I find just astounding.
I found the clip. I'm gonna play it real quick. Let's see. Double plays. Fly ball left field deep. Oh wow.
It barely got out.
Oh yeah, you could tell by the players react. Tennessee, like, really? That ball got out? Like, what? It doesn't. I mean, it was hit well, just not like. I mean, that's a elevated fastball, 97 away from you, and he just hit it out. I mean, that's pretty crazy.
Yeah, I mean, Logan Maxwell, certified good baseball player, and I guess cool to see him, succeed at a high level. It'll be his second trip to Omaha, this time in a more elevated role, obviously, than the last time.
Yeah.
But yeah, Arkansas moving on. Tennessee won a national title last year. A lot of that production was gone, but still able to have a really good season. But falls short. Arkansas moving on. I think this is, we can tie in a lot of TCU to the Arkansas story because these 2 programs have played each other a lot the past couple of seasons, and they will play each other again next year. Where at Globe Life they will play. They are playing at Globe Life, I believe, again. But Arkansas last 2 seasons, out in their own regional to 2 Big 12 teams that were purple. The first was TCU, where Trey Richardson committed many crimes, metaphorically, of course, at Baum Walker. He went crazy, and then last year Kansas State and David Bishop went into Fayetteville. David Bishop, former Horned Frog great, Zion, if you remember David Bishop.
I do, yes. Very promising his freshman year, and then left for K-State. But that's kind of crazy. So they thought, okay, well, if these TCU guys are going to kill us, we just got to get one, right? And they said, okay,
Yes.
we'll get Logan Maxwell, and it worked. And now Seth here believes that Carson Bowen will be headed to Arkansas.
No, I do not believe that.
There's no reliable information on that, by the way. We're just speculating at this point.
It would make sense.
It would. Yeah.
It would make sense. JD reported to us on the pod. He said that a lot of SEC schools, and now I'm just fingers crossed.
Yeah, a lot of SEC teams interested in Carson Bowen, but we'll see. I don't know what he's gonna do. He didn't tell us anything extra, so we're not really holding anything back, I guess. We'll see. I don't know what will happen with Carson Bowen, but anyways, that is. I mean, we didn't recap everything. Obviously, Murray State defeating Duke was pretty insane. Did not see that coming, but that sets up the 8 teams headed to Omaha. So it'll be Coastal Carolina versus Arizona, which, by the way, the games will start on June 13th, which I believe Seth said is, Friday. So the first game, Coastal Carolina versus Arizona. Then we've got Oregon State taking on Louisville, who defeated Miami in 3 games. UCLA will play Murray State on June 14th, and then at 7 o'clock, Arkansas taking on LSU. Should be a fun College World Series. What's up?
I got one note about conference breakdown of these teams to the
Mm-hmm.
astute listeners that just you listed off those teams. There's 2 from the SEC, which is the most, and then every other conference is pretty well represented. The Big Ten has one, ACC has one, Big 12 has one, the Sun Belt has one. Don't even ask me what conference Murray State is in. I think it's the Missouri Valley. And then there's an independent. I really do think, for all the hand wringing about how the SEC had 13 teams in, and maybe that was too much. I think it all came out in the wash, and that college baseball is a really good spot when it comes to competitiveness right now. And hey, who knows? Maybe an SEC team wins it again this year. Maybe Arkansas or LSU goes out there and wins it all. But odds are that they won't. And I think that's pretty cool.
It is cool. Yeah, it's a sense of like parity in college baseball where we may not get that necessarily. And with football, SEC is obviously very dominant in that regard. Big 12 has kind of struggled, and we had a Big 10 winner, but it's kind of discussed in 2 conferences, Big 10 and SEC. But baseball here, you see a lot of different representation. And even though the SEC has gotten a lot of teams in their, whether it's men's college basketball or baseball this year, it's all kind of evened itself out, like you said. So that is exciting. I definitely think that, I think for people that follow college sports or that don't necessarily follow college sports like super deep, don't necessarily understand. Like when you go to a school of a conference, like for us, we're Big 12 fans. Like we support the Big 12. We want the Big 12 to do well, unless it's like Baylor or Texas Tech. Typically we're like, okay, Arizona, yeah, they're new to the conference, but it'd be cool to see a Big 12 team make a run. And it's kind of a way for you to feel represented if your team is not in it. And I think that's what makes college sports pretty cool. Even though conferences have realigned and there's been a lot of change, which to many people they don't necessarily love, but it still gives you an opportunity to have a rooting interest. And for us, I know for you it's Arkansas. I'll be rooting for them as well, but for Arizona, you want to see them do well.
And what's weird though is that it did not and this is a tangent, it did not used to be this way. It was not this way at all. Everything was very tribal when it came to inter-conference rivalries. But then conference realignment started to happen, and everyone started to, I remember when the SEC, when Texas and Oklahoma moved to the SEC, it almost became like this us versus them in terms of conferences as a whole, right? Where everyone is trying to prove their own worth as a conference instead of just as an individual school, because it didn't used to be like that. I mean, I was not really alive for the old Southwest Conference days, but if, Texas A&M or, Texas Tech were representing the Southwest Conference in like a particular bowl game, I, as a TCU fan, would not have rooted for them to win that particular bowl game, right? That would have been asinine. But
Yeah.
that has changed now to where during bowl season of this past football calendar year, I'm rooting for like Oklahoma State. I don't know if they even made a bowl, but like to win a bowl game over, if they're playing Texas A&M or something like that, which is not how it used to be, rooting for a fellow conference mate to succeed.
Yeah, it's true. That is a very good point. It's definitely changed how we look at conferences because yeah, it's very competitive now and like, oh, well, we got these teams and oh, these teams left, but we still got to prove our worth. Like, and the difference too is like all these teams joining, there is no rivalry. Like, I don't think TCU has a rivalry with Arizona. There were some heated battles in men's basketball, sure, like a few years ago. But it's not like I hate Arizona. I don't hate Colorado. I don't hate BYU, Utah, whatever. So I guess it makes it a little easier when they're just coming in, and there's not really an established rivalry between TCU and these other teams. So um, I guess that makes it a little easier.
Yeah, and it's not the case. I know I see a lot of SEC fans. I know there's a lot of SEC gun ho. They'll be chanting SEC and whatnot. But I think a
Hmm.
vast majority of SEC fans, like say you're a Georgia fan in Florida, they're not rooting for Florida to win the NCAA basketball tournament. They're rooting for Houston, right? They don't want to
Hmm.
see Florida win anything. So, like, I mean, there's definitely exceptions
There's
to this.
boundaries.
And I don't want to say like that we're rooting for all the Big 12 schools, like you mentioned, like Baylor and Tech, but uh, it is different, because of the 8 Big 12 schools that came in, TCU has like an existing rivalry with what? And any of them? Probably none, right? Like Houston, maybe because they played in the Southwest Conference way back when, but really no.
Yeah. Yeah. It's like Utah. They ran into them a couple times for football, but it's not heated. There's not Texas. The only Texas team coming in was Houston. So yeah,
Moral of the story is, please, can we go back to the way it was?
I'm good with that. I'm good with that. Let's bring back the old Pac-12. Sorry, new Pac-12 teams, you got to go back.
I'm sorry, Fresno State, get out of here. This ain't the
Yeah,
same.
yeah. Sorry, UC Davis. I think UC Davis joined the Pac-12. Um,
Which is
you
crazy,
got to go
by the
back.
way. This one.
It is a little bit, yeah. You got to go back. Uh, but unfortunately, that's not what it's going to be. Okay, good conversations there on the super regionals conference realignment. Again, we could yap about conference realignment and rooting interest for hours, but we gotta get back on track here and talk a little bit more about TCU baseball with the transfer portal. It was announced over the weekend that Sawyer Strosnider, via his Instagram, because that's pretty much the way to do it now, announced that he's returning to Fort Worth for another season. Very, very big news. A huge, huge sigh of relief for all TCU fans that he is returning. He was just announced the Freshman Player of the Year from Perfect Game USA, which is really cool. Absolutely deserved. A phenomenal season, a season at the plate offensively that I don't think I've ever seen from a freshman. He is truly a special player. He will go high in the drafts coming up here soon, and I'm glad that he's going to be able to do it in a TCU uniform.
Yeah, that middle stretch run of the year, like pre-shoulder injury for him, was really fun to watch. And do you remember our conversations that we had specifically about him at the beginning of the baseball season, where he was hitting under the Mendoza line and he looked kind of lost at the bottom of the order? And we were sitting here talking about how Anthony Silva and Carson Bowen and Sawyer Strosnider need to get their act together, or this offense is going nowhere. And
Mm-hmm.
wouldn't you know it, all three of them had really good seasons, particularly the latter two there in Bowen and Strosnider. And before you know it, Bowen is, one of TCU's linchpins, and he's going to probably earn a bag somewhere else for his efforts this year. And Strosnider is the best freshman in all the land, according to Perfect Game USA. And um, made himself such a big contributor to this team that it was kind of, up in the air about whether or not he was going to even stay. And according to him, it's fourth forever, and he'll be here uh, for at least one more season. He is a draft eligible sophomore, so if he puts up the same numbers that he did this season, I doubt that he will be returning to college baseball at the end of this year. But it's nice to have him back. That's for sure.
100%. He should absolutely go for the draft if he's able to duplicate this. Big 12 all freshman team, first team all Big 12, also the conference freshman of the year. Just insane numbers from Strosnider. And it is kind of funny. People were wondering, like, okay, is he coming back? Like, what's going on? and you have to now post on social media, "Oh yeah, guys, by the way, I'm coming back." Oh, okay, cool. Like, it just you
I think we
gotta
should
give that
require
first out.
coaches to do this as well. Coaches are so volatile that we should require them to go on their Instagram after every season and post a little thing. They're like, "I'm returning."
Could you imagine how awkward it would have been? Even more awkward if Schloss last year was like, "I'm not leaving. I'm not staying, guys. I'm leaving."
People
Uh,
forget, we're almost at the 1 year anniversary of the infamous Schlossnagle departure from Texas A&M, which, by the way, was one of the best, like maybe span of 48 hours on the Bird app in a long time. I mean, I could talk about that for years. I mean, they lose that game to Tennessee. They go in the press conference. Someone asks him, because there's been kind of rumors going for a couple of days about whether or not he'd leave, and someone asks like, "Are you going to leave?" And he goes, "That's such a stupid question," and then he leaves like
Student
12.
reporter too. Yep. How dare you insinuate that I would leave College Station?
Have you seen the picture of the Texas AD? He was like hiding out in a graveyard in College Station, waiting for Schlossnagle to finish up all his like exit interviews at A&M, and then he was gonna like scoop him up and then take him to Austin.
Oh my gosh, no. What the heck? That's funny.
He was hiding in his car because like if you're the AD of Texas, like, and you get spotted in College Station, people are gonna notice. And so
Yeah,
he
like, what is this guy doing? He's like,
he like
okay, let me
was waiting for Slosh to get home, and then he went to his house, and then
That's
they.
hilarious. Oh my gosh. Talk about
But
being like,
Strosnider is not going to do that. He is coming back. He is not going to be. Hopefully, fingers crossed, nothing changes. But he's not going to be scooped up in the middle of the night and taken to Austin.
yeah,
Clip this when he does that.
that would suck. But for now, he's definitely coming back. It's good to see that him and Noah Franco, that that tandem is returning. And then obviously you've got Tommy Laporte coming back. The big question mark that still remains at large here is Ben Abelt. We still don't know what's going on with him, if he's going to enter the draft or return to TCU. As JD told us on Friday, those are kind of the only options for the most part. Does he head to the draft? Does he come back? Obviously, we'd love for him to return to TCU. And I think coming off an injury, if I'm thinking about it, I would want to come back to college, even though his draft stock's still pretty high. But I think running that risk might be tough. But I don't know. We'll see. That's absolutely huge, and I think that's going to be his decision to return or not is going to depend on how TCU attacks the transfer portal, what kind of arms they go for, because I think that's the thing they 100% need to be going for is pitching. But be huge if he came back.
Yeah, it would. I don't want. I was playing the what if game earlier, talking about TCU winning that Big 12 championship game. The what if of if Ben Abel never had to get Tommy John will forever stay with me this season. I just think it goes so much differently in a better way if you run
Mm-hmm.
that 3-man rotation of either, Abel, Laporte, Cademan Parker, or you can maybe throw Mason Brassfield into that mix as well. If you can run that instead of what you kind of end up having to do for the entire year, which was mix and match Sunday starters, then I think that this would have been such a formidable force to be reckoned with throughout the regular season and then maybe even a deeper postseason run. But alas, it was not meant to be. And hopefully, he comes back and they can just run it back with that same trio, right? If that were to happen, then they could just try it again next year. But it would have been fun to see this year.
It would have been, but we'll see. Hopefully that happens, and we can get a sneak peek, and we can actually see that play out next year, because I think expectations are high for TCU next season. It's a young team. A lot of your good players are returning, and another one also is Anthony Silva. His brother hit the transfer portal, and so a lot of people are like, "Oh, does that mean Silva's out of here?" But we'll see. another guy that's obviously filled that has been great at that shortstop position the last 3 seasons for TCU and would be really huge if he could return. But at the end of the day, look, these guys need to do what's best for them. I don't ever get mad. I get upset, like, oh man, but I never get mad if a guy hits the transfer portal. I think you got to do what's best for you. And if it's not in Fort Worth, then so be it. But we've seen that obviously with so many different players, but we'll see. I'm excited to see how this plays out and hoping those two guys return.
For sure. For sure. Come back to Fort Worth. Let's run it back. Let's win a national title and let's parade through the streets. My goal is for TCU to win a national title in some sport. Well, like in like a big sport. I'm sorry, tennis and beach volleyball. And baseball is their best shot.
Yeah,
Of all of them.
that's you just gave me an episode idea. Like
we'll come back to that later.
talking
About in the summer.
Yes, because guys, we're in the summer months now. There's not a single TCU sport that's being played right now, so we're gonna be looking for ideas to try to come out with videos each week, and that could be one of them. Like which TCU program has the best chance to win a national title? But we'll also ramp up football conversations over the summer. We'll keep talking about baseball as the College World Series plays out. Then any news regarding basketball, and hopefully we'll try to get those things covered over the summer as we get into football. Then once that starts, we'll be full go discussing all things TCU football. But that's kind of our just laying out our plans for what we hope to do, and we're also trying to get some insiders as well as some TCU reporters, hoping to get some athletes as well, just to try to offer different perspectives as well. So keep that in mind as well. Stay tuned for that. But that'll finish things up here for this episode of Believe in TCU. You can follow us on Instagram, subscribe to our YouTube page, or listen to us wherever you get your podcasts, all at Believe in TCU. So for Seth Dowdle, I'm Zion Trammell. Thanks for tuning in. We'll see you guys next time. And as always, go Frogs.